most of the time when we talk about neuropathy, we're talking about the peripheral nerves, and that means the hands and the feet. So because the nerves are exquisitely sensitive to changes in energy, if there's not enough energy being made, then nerve impulses just don't go very well. And if you think about the impulse that has to go from the tips of your toes all the way up your leg to your back, where the nerve cell is actually in your back. And there's a long wire called an axon that goes all the way from your back, all the way down to
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. How are you guys today? We're excited to have you. I am going live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you guys are on there, say hello. I'm having to get a little creative with Facebook because it's changed some things. So hopefully you'll still find me. Today, we are going to be talking about type 2 diabetes and also neuropathy. This has come up quite often. In fact, last week, I think we had a few different questions about this. And so we decided, you know what, we better dedicate a webinar to this and really dig in and learn what Dr. Saunders has to say about this. And I'm excited to do that. So first of all, let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Go ahead and post or write in the chat where you guys are from. And then as we go, if you have questions during the webinar, post those in the Q&A and I will do my best to answer those questions. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get this shared here on Facebook because it wasn't working earlier, but let me see what I can do. Dr. Saunders, would you mind giving us a disclaimer before we get started?
Okay, I disclaim all responsibility for anything I say, because it might be true and it might not be true. But here's the reality is that I'm not your doctor and I don't know your specific situation. So I give general information for a lot of people, and hopefully it'll help, but make sure you apply it properly to your specific situation. And you may need help with that. You might need a, well, we used to say doctor, but now he'd like provider. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And just one of the reasons that we tell you this also, I just got to share this. We have someone who we talked with recently, and we've shared this on a couple different webinars, who has done our diabetes solution kit. And he has gotten really, really tuned into the way that his body works. And so now he's able to try different foods, see how his blood sugar responds to it. And he's even found that he cannot chew sugar-free gum without his blood sugar spiking. He can have a little bit of fruit juice and it's fine, but the gum didn't work for him. Now, is that going to be the same for every single person who hops on the webinar or who tries the diabetes solution kit? No, but that's also the beauty of this system. I feel like you finally get to this place where you're so sensitive to things that you now, instead of just feeling tired or your blood sugar skyrocketing or just kind of feeling crummy, you're at this place where you're like, oh, I feel good. And oh my goodness, it is not worth it for me to do this thing that makes me feel like junk. And that's what a lot of people have shared with us. They finally are feeling really good. And they're able to kind of tailor this to their bodies. So another reason why this is your journey. You get to decide how you're going to do this and what works best for you, which is the way it should be, right?
Right.
You will hear us referencing this diabetes solution kit quite often. And so if you have no idea what this is, you can find this at bartonwebinar.com. This is the program that Dr. Saunders has put together with some others on our team. But if you were to meet Dr. Saunders in person, if you were to go to his office, see him in his clinic, he would recommend this to you. But I bet you'd have to visit with him more than one time to get all this information. I'm going to guess. And I'm going to guess it's going to cost you more than under $20. Probably. Right? So this is a really, really good option for those of you who want to reverse your type 2, or maybe you're pre-diabetic, or maybe you just do not want to get type 2. Maybe you realize that you have a family history of type 2 and you're like, I'm changing this for my family. I'm not doing this.
Just remember, you get what you paid for.
Every time. Every time. He's still the same guy.
Okay.
Still the same guy. Okay.
Well, there's some truth to that, because when I used to have programs, people would pay $5,000 for a program, a 6-month program. And during those 6 months, we had a nutritionist and an acupuncturist and a chiropractor and a herbalist, and we had a naturopathic doctor. Anyway, you had appointments every week, or maybe a couple times a week to come in. It was an intensive program. But because people invested so much money into it, they did the program. They showed up for their appointments, and it was really important to them because they had a big investment. Yeah, at the end of 6 months, they didn't have diabetes anymore, because we worked with each person individually, and each one had an individual program. And some people had other issues. We'd be given IV nutrients and all kinds of things. And that was all part of the program, right? But they had a lot of investment in it. And so you guys can invest in a different way. What you do is you pay a very little amount for the actual book. And your investment is not so much money, but you're going to put your time and your effort into it. And you're going to have to learn it on your own, so to speak. But, it's laid out for you, but you're going to have to go through it and learn it. And it's not done for you. So you pay for convenience, right?
Yes, totally. How many of you guys have actually purchased the Diabetes Solution Kit? Go ahead and comment in the chat. We're curious to know that. Many of you have been on these webinars each week sharing your stories. And man, I tell you what, guys, if you want to hear from some people who have done all the hard work, there are many of them on this webinar right now. They have done the hard work, and yet they keep coming back. For some reason, they just keep coming back and hanging out with us. But we love you guys. We're so excited that you're here. There is a group on Facebook. It's called Barton Webinar, and it's a private group. I have to add you to that. But you can share things there. Maybe you found recipes that work well for you, or just some information maybe on how stress has affected your type 2, or it's a community where you guys can share information. We just really encourage you guys to do that, because it's a lot of you who are already on this chat, just sharing life with other people who are looking to get healthy just like you are. So we encourage you to head over there and take advantage of that group of people. It's a great group. Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about neuropathy. And Dr. Saunders, first of all, I feel like we talk about neuropathy, but what is actually happening in the body when someone says that they have neuropathy?
Okay, that is a great question because it's so broad. Let's start with the definition of neuropathy. Neuropathy, neuro, nerve, pathy, problem. So you have a problem with your nerves. And in other words, the nerve is just not working right. And what nerves are they? Well, that's where the variability comes in, because it could be the nerves in your eyeballs. And so the number one cause of blindness in the United States is diabetes, right? It could be the nerves in your brain, your memory and stuff. And what's the number one cause of Alzheimer's disease? Diabetes, right? So most of the time when we talk about neuropathy, we're talking about the peripheral nerves, and that means the hands and the feet. So because the nerves are exquisitely sensitive to changes in energy, if there's not enough energy being made, then nerve impulses just don't go very well. And if you think about the impulse that has to go from the tips of your toes all the way up to your leg to your back, where the nerve cell is actually in your back. And there's a long wire called an axon that goes all the way from your back, all the way down to the tip of your toes. And so that's a long wire. And if anywhere along that wire you're not getting enough energy, or if all the way along that wire there's a lack of energy, then it's going to work a little bit, and then it's not going to work, and then it's going to work, and then it's not going to work, and then it's going to work somewhat so that you're kind of numb and then kind of tingly, like it's pins and needles, kind of like if you've ever slept on your arm and you cut off the circulation, you wake up in the morning, it's cold and numb, and you go like this and shake it out, and then the nerves start coming alive again, and you get these tingling and pins and needles and all that sensation. That's what people feel when they have neuropathy. And it's not a small problem, you know. It's if imagine feeling like that and trying to go to sleep at night. You know, it can be really hard. And so some people, when they have really bad neuropathy, they've gone through that, it's all numb. And guess what? Numb is better than all that pins and needles, right? So that they start getting better, their diabetes starts getting better, their energy starts improving, and their nerves start working again. So then what happens? They start going, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It's made me worse. It's made my feet worse. It's getting better because now the nerves are working because they're no longer numb. So neuropathy is a difficult thing to deal with. Now, why? Energy problems. What is type 2 diabetes? It's an energy problem. It's a problem with utilization of energy. And when you have high insulin, you have a big problem. And remember, we've talked about this. You have normally about 40% of your energy comes from sugar and 60% from fat. And when you have high insulin, you can't burn fat. And fat is a more efficient fuel. It doesn't make as much oxygen-free radicals. It's more long-acting. It's kind of like a diesel fuel is the way I like to look at it. Fat is like diesel fuel. You can run a diesel engine, you know, you get those big trucks and they're hauling, 40 tons of stuff across the country, and they can go back and forth 100 times across the country on one engine, right? They're not having to replace the engine all the time. You put 1 million miles on a diesel engine pretty easily because it's low octane, there's low energy, relatively low energy, and the heat, it doesn't heat up as much, so it doesn't do as much damage to the engine. Whereas a gasoline engine, you're not going to run as many miles. And if you get a premium gas engine, you can go fast in those engines, but the trade-off is your engine's not going to last as long because it's going to heat up and burn up and be gone in a short time. Well, your body's kind of like that. If you're running on mostly jet fuel, well, jet fuel is actually kind of like diesel fuel. If you're running on nitromethane, then so you have to run on sugar all the time, and you're running on very little fat, then you're causing oxygen-free radicals, you're causing damage. Things aren't getting repaired the way they're supposed to. And so that's a problem for the nerves. The other problem is that the sugar, now you have to run on sugar, right? And your nerves have to run on sugar. But there's a barrier. It's called the blood-brain barrier. And it's found in cells because cells can't get sugar through them without insulin. And if you don't have insulin receptors, you can't get sugar in there. And so what happens is you lower the insulin receptors. So sugar can't get into your nerve cells. So what happens? They run out of energy. They just run out. What runs out? Well, your eyeballs. Your eyes are using a ton of energy. Your body, your brain is using 20% of all the energy in your body is used in your brain. That's a lot. You think about it. And what if you can't get glucose into there? What happens? Well, things just start not working just because they don't have enough energy. It's kind of like your engine in your car used to be 6 cylinders and now it's only 4 cylinders. And you go, gosh, I can make it go, but it doesn't go very fast. It doesn't work very well. And if you've ever run on 1 cylinder, it sounds like a lawnmower going. Some people, the brain, there's only enough energy to run on 1 cylinder or 2 cylinders, and that's not running very well. That's why it's so important to get your energy right. And that's what neuropathy is. So we have some things to help with neuropathy. Number one, by far, don't think it's a supplement, because if you think that taking a pill is going to fix this problem, don't even go there. Because the real problem is you need insulin receptors. You need to be insulin sensitive in order for your nerve cells to start working, your kidney cells to start working, your brain cells, your eyeballs. in order for them to start working again as much as they can, if they're already dead, they're gone. But if they're not dead, they're just non-functional because they have a lack of energy. You can get them back. You can get that part back. It's not a complete loss necessarily. So it's worth it. So what you do is you become very insulin sensitive. And that's where phase 1 of the program comes in. If you have the diabetes solution kit and you're starting in phase 1 of the program, what you're doing is you're not eating enough carbohydrates to run your body on. So you need 60% or 80% of your body to run on carbs, and you're only burning 20% fat, then if you're not getting enough carbs, what does your body do? It goes, oh no, I don't have any energy. I'm going to have to start burning fat, I guess. And that is so important. That your ability to run on fat, that's where you get resilience. That's where your metabolism can function on whatever it needs, not dependent on what you're eating at the moment. So, like some people get hypoglycemia and they go, oh gosh, I need to drink some orange juice, and they drink orange juice. That's actually not the best thing to do. It's better to get low blood sugar so that your body starts switching to fat burning. So where you're getting, like 40% on sugar and 60% on fat. That's actually a really good way to go. And people who do long distance things like people that race bicycles, they'll run on 80% fat and 20% carbs. Because the fat is like a long-term fuel, you can keep going and going and going for that. So long distance types of exercises.
I've been reading a little bit about autophagy.
Yeah.
And this is this is like this, almost like you're eating, you're using the fat in your body.
Right. That is part of autophagy, is you got all this fat stored all over, and everybody's got fat. Even if you're super skinny.
And you need fat. And you need fat.
I checked my body fat percent. It was 17%.
Wow.
That's
okay.
Not great.
Wait, let's stop here. Now let's stop here. What did we learn about body fat percentages? This is so interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that since we're talking about it?
Yeah, the body fat percent, under 20% is not necessarily healthier. In fact, body fat percent around 20 to 25% is perfectly okay. It's actually good for you. So having a low body fat percent changes how you burn, how your metabolism works, because if you're burning more carbohydrates than fat, then it's not healthy.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, just had to throw that in there too. I was going to ask you something else. This is a random question. I feel like I'm derailing us a little bit, but I also read, since we were talking about the brain and how it's working and all of that, I also read that there are no pain receptors in the brain.
Right. It's really weird. So once they get through the skull, so the surgeon has this saw, and it's like a little circular saw, buzzes a hole, takes the skull off, and the person is awake during the surgery. They don't have to put any anesthesia in there. They can just work in the brain. Okay, we're going to cut this out, cut that out. And the person's awake while they're doing that. Sometimes, like when they're doing cancer surgery, so that they can tell where they are. Okay, what do you feel here? What is this? What is this? And they'll stimulate a part of the brain and say, okay, what just happened? And they'll go, oh, that's where something really weird, like a memory comes out or something. It's really
and
cool.
Someone who I grew up with migraines, and so the thought of there being no pain receptors in my brain kind of blows my mind a little bit. I'm like, so where is that coming from? Just very interesting.
My brain hurts. I don't know about your brain.
Exactly, right? Anyway, just very interesting. I just love learning about the body. It just fascinates me. So I love these webinars because you're always teaching us so many things. And boy, we're getting a lot of questions already about all of this, but maybe we need to dive back in here to neuropathy.
Okay, so back to the neuropathy. So the number one most important thing to do is control the blood sugar, get insulin sensitive, do phase 1 of the program, and exercise. When you exercise, you cause insulin sensitivity. So exercise and being on the keto diet essentially is where you start with that. Then we have the secondary thing, and that is the nerves that need to be repaired can be helped by 2 nutrients. One is called alpha lipoic acid, and the other one is benfotiamine. Benfotiamine is vitamin B1. And there's been a lot of research on this, high dose vitamin B1 for a lot of different things, including Parkinson's disease, which is also a nervous system disorder in the brain. And it repairs neurons all by itself. So in the studies, we took what was effective in the studies and we put it into a capsule. So you can take 1 a day is an adequate amount. When you're first starting, you could do 2 a day. And so some people do 2 a day to begin with. So the benfotiamine helps to repair the blood vessels as well. So you get good circulation to the nerves so that you can get oxygen to the nerves so the energy systems work better. So this is a help. It's not the answer to your problem necessarily. You still have to be insulin sensitive, or how are you going to get to glucose across that barrier into the cell so that there's energy in the cell? And the other part is oxygen in the cells and getting enough blood flow to the cells. So the Nervala can be helpful as well. So that's how you take care of your nerves. And you know what? If you don't have neuropathy yet, then do the same thing. Get on the program and get your insulin resistance down. Because some people have neuropathy before they even have high blood sugar. So they're not even diagnosed with diabetes technically, and they already have neuropathy because of the insulin resistance, because that's the problem primarily in those people.
Interesting. Okay. See, this is good stuff, guys. I'm getting a lot of questions here too. Someone asked, oh man, so many have come in. I don't know if I can find it again. I might have to come back to it. Oh, here, this is from Michelle. Can an atrophied nerve be regenerated, like the optic nerve?
Okay. The answer is yes and no. The nerve cells, see, the nervous system is a little different. The nerve cell that's lost, that's gone, that's dead. Can you regenerate dead nerves? Yes, you can. But here's the problem. The connections aren't there. You have to rebuild the connections of whatever nervous. So for example, if someone has a stroke and part of their brain is lost, well, it's been shown that there are stem cells called astrocytes in the brain. There are helper nerve cells. There are stem cells that regenerate brain tissue. But guess what? That brain tissue doesn't have the connections that the old brain tissue had. So the way things work is a little different in the nervous system. If you regenerate the dead cells in your optic nerve, for example, that doesn't mean they're working. That doesn't mean they're doing what the old cells were doing, because they never developed those connections. So then the question is, can you develop the connections? Well, technically, yes, possibly. The way the brain works is kind of odd. There's actually a really good book. Deutsch wrote a book called the Brain's Way of Healing. And it's kind of interesting to read how the brain works around problems that are in the brain. So like somebody has a stroke and the brain works around it and allows things to happen. And there was a kid that had hydrocephalus, where he had a thin layer of brain inside his water-filled skull. Hydrocephalus means water in the brain. And there was so much water, it had pushed his brain into just a thin layer of brain. And nobody knew it because he had normal functioning, because the brain was able to work with what he had. It's really weird. So the answer is yes and no. But here's the thing. So if those nerves are asleep, and a lot of neuropathy is that the cells aren't like completely out of energy and dead. They have some energy, just not enough to function, not enough to conduct that nerve impulse all the way up to the back where the cell is. So you're not getting the impulses. So once you restore that, yeah, it all comes back. And so for a lot of people, it all comes back. And we have a lot of testimonials of that too. People come on this and they write in and they go, dude, I've been taking Nervala for 3 months and my nervous my neuropathy is gone completely, like it's gone. So we know that it comes back, and the research pretty much shows that too.
Wow. Yes, so interesting. A couple notes here that are just so good. Robert said, I have the diabetes kit. He's using Cinechroma and fiber greens, completed phase 1, found out what foods and eating habits affect my sugar, got off metformin and using berberine. So that's awesome. Yeah, you're doing all the work. That's so good. Here's another really good note from Lloyd. I have the book, went from 10.4 A1C to 6.5 in 30 days. So I know it's done.
Wow. That's a big difference. 6.5 is like barely borderline diabetes.
Yeah.
10 is like terrible diabetes. That's an average blood sugar of over 300. It's like, it's big. Yeah.
Great job, Lloyd. That is awesome. We had someone who wrote in and wondered if we have anything for anemia, or what would you recommend?
Okay, so anemia, number one, find out why you have anemia, because there's a lot of different reasons. Anemia means a lack of hemoglobin in the blood. So your oxygen carrying capacity in the blood is limited. Sometimes it's vitamin B12, sometimes it's folic acid, sometimes it's iron deficiency. Sometimes it's other B vitamins. B1 can actually do that too. B6 can do that. Toxicities of various kinds. You can have anemia from lead toxicity. Used to be a really common cause of anemia. Now it's kind of rare, but I've seen it. I've seen a case or two too. So find out why you have anemia. Don't just start taking iron pills. Look at your blood, find out what's going on, is the B vitamin deficiency? Because sometimes people have anemia, low hemoglobin, and their red blood cells are huge. And they go, aha, that is a macrocytosis, macrocytic anemia, which is often a B12 or B9 or B6, but mostly B12 or B9 deficiency. And sometimes it's a relative deficiency. So if somebody has vitamin B9 is folic acid. If they have an enzyme that's missing called methyl tetrahydrofolate acid folate reductase. Yeah, MTHFR, whatever that comes out to be.
I know what people call it.
Don't say it. I had a patient say that to me once. It shocked me. I was like, what? She goes, I've got the MF gene. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know that existed. So anyway, so people can't, sometimes you got enough folic acid, but you can't convert that to the active form. So then you also get anemia from that. So look at why you have anemia, and because you may need, the treatments are totally different depending on the cause.
Interesting. Okay. Someone had asked, what about a chiropractor? Could a chiropractor help with neuropathy or sciatica?
In some cases, if it's a blood flow issue, often I've had people have chiropractic adjustments and be helped with that. There was a chiropractor in town. He had this program of kicking for sciatica, and gosh, I wish I knew what the technique was. I just had a patient tell me about it, and then I heard someone else tell me about it, and then it works really well. It's like some kicking program that the sciatica goes away. And I've had people go to physical therapy and other chiropractors and other things, and without any benefit. And this guy seems to have a way of doing that. Yeah. So yeah, it can help.
Okay. Judy's wondering, what is alchloric acid? Alchloric acid, and what does B12 do?
Alchloric acid. How do you spell that?
ALK, alchloric, alchloric, ALKLORIC.
Gosh, I don't know.
Okay.
Gosh.
And then how about B12? What does B12 do?
Okay, so vitamin B12 is cobalamin. It's a huge molecule made by bacteria, and it's only made by bacteria. It's in no foods at all unless bacteria make it and put it in the foods. So like bacteria in the guts of animals make vitamin B12, and so they get it from that. Other animals get it from dung, actually, because the bacteria in the bowels, the dung fertilizes the plants, and then the plants have vitamin B12 in them because they've been fertilized with dung. So, vegetarians throughout history, they've used dung to fertilize their plants. They get vitamin B12 from that, and you could be vegetarian and get vitamin B12 that way. The way we do it today with chemical fertilizers, you're not going to get vitamin B12 from plants at all. So you actually have to take a supplement. So why is that important? Because it is so important for so many things. Methylation is just, it's so simple. Methylation is putting a methyl group, which is just a carbon with, 3 hydrogens, attaching it to different things to change the way things work and the way your genes work. It turns on genes, it turns off genes. It inactivates or deactivates toxins to make them non-toxic. And it gets rid of, homocysteine is an obvious one that we look at a lot, and methylmalonic acid. But so toxins that you make in your body and toxins that you ingest that come from outside your body. And also the cobalamin molecule, the B12 is very important for making energy. If you don't have B12, you can't make energy. So there are so many functions of that vitamin that it's really important.
All right. Carl says, I'm in phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit. Can I use fiber greens, or do I need to wait until I'm in phase 2?
Yeah, wait until you're in phase 2. Yeah, and the only reason I say that is because it has some stevia in it. And just like Leslie was talking about this morning, some people, just chewing sugar-free gum was worse than even drinking juice, and juice has sugar in it. But and the research showed the same thing with diet sodas. People drinking diet sodas had worse problems with weight gain than people who drink sugar sodas. So yeah, I would say avoid fiber greens until you're in phase 2.
Great question. And we've kind of touched a little bit on this. Mark said, what is better, Cinechroma or fiber greens? I'm trying to get rid of drugs and pills. So are supplements the answer?
No, the only way to get off your drugs, the reasonable way to get off your drugs is to do phase 1 of the program. So get yourself insulin sensitive. So do phase 1 of the program, exercise, so that you have insulin sensitivity, and that's where you don't need the drugs anymore.
Okay. And you know what? I started thinking, if you guys go to bartonwebinar.com, we have our list of our top questions that are asked. And we need to actually put this one on there because this does come up all the time. People will hop on and say, okay, I'm ready to get rid of my metformin. Can I just use Cinechroma instead of the metformin, or, something like that? Why were these supplements really created? Why was Cinechroma created?
Okay. So Cinechroma was made because when I was, as I have patients come in and I was doing programs for them, and I'm trying to find out what things things that they're sensitive to, deficiencies that they have, toxicities that they have. And so I found deficiencies were fairly common. So chromium helps you use sugar. It's a common deficiency. Vanadium helps you use sugar. It's a common deficiency. Selenium, like there's no foods in the United States with selenium. Why? Plants don't need selenium. So it's not going to come out of the soil unless you got a lot of selenium in the soil. And then it'll be in the plant, not because the plant needs it, but just because it comes up in the plant. And so the plant methylates it, and you get selenomethiamine attaches it so that it doesn't become toxic to the plant. So you can get it from plants, but only if they're grown in high selenium soils. And guess what? In that sense, we don't have high selenium soils. So I found, and vitamin D. Vitamin D is a common deficiency and helps you be more sensitive to insulin. So I looked at these things, and these were things that I was giving out to people all the time. And so they're going home with an armful of pills to pop. And so I talked to Joe, and I said, Joe, why don't we do like a supplement that has all of those basic things in it that pretty much every diabetic's going to need to take one way or another. So it's not for the purpose of lowering your blood sugar. It's not like a drug at all. It's for giving your body the nutrition it needs so that it could use sugar properly. That's really why they were created.
All right. Interesting question, actually. I don't think this has come up on one of our webinars, guys. We're on episode 208, and I don't think anyone's asked, what do I do about cold sores?
Cold sores, cold sores and diabetes. Okay. Cold sores are a herpes virus, and there's a lot of herpes viruses, actually. You may not know this, but Epstein-Barr virus, mononucleosis, cytomegalovirus also causes mononucleosis. Human herpes virus 6 is a common problem with fatigue. Varicella virus, which causes both chickenpox and shingles, is also a herpes virus. So these are all herpes viruses. They're in the same family, herpes viridae. And one of the characteristics of this family of viruses is like everybody gets them. Everybody. Like if you test for Epstein-Barr virus or a herpes virus, 95% of people will test antibody positive. In other words, they've been exposed to it at some time in their lives. And the other thing about this virus is once you're exposed to it, it hangs out in your body somewhere. It hides from the immune system in a nerve somewhere. And so the herpes simplex virus causes the cold sore because you have some other reason, like some toxicity, or you have another virus, like you've gotten the coronavirus. Actually, the coronavirus, okay, this is a little tangent. The coronavirus has been shown to cause recurrence of Epstein-Barr. So people say, well, I got the corona and I've had fatigue ever since. And they're probably not fatigued from the coronavirus ever since. They're probably got this recurrence of the Epstein-Barr. So they actually have mononucleosis causing their fatigue, which is a totally different cause. And we've talked about that before. We'll talk about it at a different time. So if you get like a rhinovirus and it suppresses your white blood cells enough to allow that herpes virus to come out and create a cold sore. So that's why they call it a cold sore. I got a cold and I got this sore. But guess what? They're two completely different viruses. They're not even related. Just the one suppressed the immune system so that the other could come out. So what does that what does that mean? What do I do about this? Well, there is a medication. If you get cold sores frequently, there's a medication called it's acyclovir, but Valtrex, valacyclovir is actually a lot better because it's the same thing, but it lasts longer. So you only take it twice a day. And so if you start that immediately, then it'll shorten the time that you have a cold sore. If you wait for a few days till the cold sore, like if you get the like tingling and go, oh no, I'm going to get a cold sore, that's the time to take the medication. There's also something called lysine, L-lysine, and you can take that. It's an amino acid that inhibits the absorption of another one called arginine. And it turns out this virus needs arginine to reproduce. And so the lysine kind of inhibits it so that it doesn't reproduce, so that you can slow it down that way. And you can take them both together. You can do the lysine and the Valtrex, or you can just do one or the other and find out what works for you.
Interesting. All right. Thanks for asking. All right. We have a question here from Old School. And Old School says, in addition to my diabetes, I've been having male performance issues for 10 to 15 years. I've used the popular pills for years, but began to have symptoms and I stopped using them. Do you have a supplement and how will it help me with this issue? I'm told my performance problem may not be related to or caused by my diabetes.
Okay. If it's not related to or caused by your diabetes, okay, so I don't know what the exact statistic is, but a majority of performance problems, erectile dysfunction, are nervous system problems, brain problems primarily. And a lot of times they're emotional problems, and not a physical problem, a problem with the blood vessels. So when you don't make enough nitric oxide, then you don't dilate the right blood vessels to allow for an erection. And if that happens, there's a lot of different reasons. And so your question is, do we have a supplement that can fix that? Well, we have Niagara XL, which that is essentially what it was made for, to help people with that kind of problem. But remember, if what you said was your problem is probably not caused by diabetes, then that may not be the answer either. You know, you may have to look in other places, because there's a lot of different reasons why you could have that kind of issue.
Okay. I have a couple different questions from people who would love to have you as their doctor, but I believe you only can see your patients in Santa Barbara and Utah. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, in California, anywhere in California.
Anywhere in California. Okay.
Yeah. And Utah.
So probably
I have 2 licenses.
Okay, for those 2 states.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing to do then is, you know what, I will post his contact information. You can call his office.
Yeah, I've had people come from, I had someone from Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and she just drove all the way from Las Vegas.
Nice. Okay. All right. I will post that here shortly. So let me see. What else do we have? Could you explain what cortisol is and any information that you can give us about it? Willow is doing well on the program. Thank you so much for giving us more choice on how to take care of ourselves.
Okay, cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. So when you're stressed, you make cortisol. And that's not just like, oh, I got too much to do and not enough time to do it. That's not that kind of stress necessarily, although that's part of it. But any kind of stress, when you wake up in the morning, guess what that is? That's stress. You're going from completely asleep, and you need energy. And so you got to have cortisol. So cortisol is your wake up hormone. That's in the morning when you wake up, boom, you make cortisol, and that gets everything started. It's the catabolic hormone, and catabolic means it's using energy, and generally that also indicates you're breaking down tissue. Catabolism literally means breaking down. So you're breaking down your sugar into ATP and fat. You're breaking down fat into ATP. So you're using all this stuff. Cortisol also has the effect of making you insulin resistant. And if you think about why that would be, it makes perfect sense. If you think, okay, if I'm really stressed, then and I'm running or whatever, then what could happen is my blood sugar could drop low, and then my brain wouldn't work. But I need my brain to work. So the cortisol makes you insulin resistant. So you're running around or whatever, getting away in a fight or flight situation. And it keeps your blood sugar elevated so that your brain always has enough sugar to work, because the brain's going to have a constant supply. So, under a stressful situation, it makes perfect sense. But what if you're stressed all the time? What if you're always making cortisol and you're always in a catabolic state, breaking down sugar and insulin and being insulin resistant from the cortisol? A lot of people notice it a lot in the morning because they're doing their morning blood sugar, they're testing, or they have a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, and they're going, gosh, you know, during the nighttime I'm fine, and every morning it spikes up. What the heck? We get that question all the time. Why? It's cortisol. Cortisol makes you insulin resistant. So even though you didn't eat anything, your blood sugar spikes, because now you can't bring sugar into the cells because your cells are blocked from doing that. And you're not exercising, so you're not bringing sugar into your muscle cells. So cortisol is essential for your function. If you don't have cortisol, then you have a disease called Addison's disease, which can be a crisis, which people can actually die from. So you need cortisol. If you don't have enough cortisol, then you can be fatigued all the time and just never have any energy to do anything, because you don't get this wake-up hormone to get things moving and active. If you have too much cortisol, then you have insulin resistance and all of the other issues of breaking down your body associated with that. Breaking down, by that I mean literally breaking down, like your cartilage in your joints gets broken down, your skin gets thinner. Have you ever seen people with that paper thin skin, like they just rub by something and they get 3-corner tears in their skin? I used to work in a nursing home. I see that all the time. That's from cortisol. Cortisol does that. And so your skin is getting thinner, your joints are getting thinner, your muscles are breaking down, your connective tissue is breaking down. All of this is happening because of this high cortisol. So you go, oh, then I don't want cortisol. Well, you have to have cortisol to live. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to do exactly the way you were created. It is beautiful. The system is so beautiful that in the morning, you get a lot of cortisol. You get energy, you start using that energy, you can do stuff, you can think, everything works. And then at night, what happens? Your cortisol goes down to 0. And it's so like, goes from 20 to 0.02. It's like that much difference between morning to night. So at nighttime, it goes down to 0. And then you get the anabolic phase. You get human growth hormone comes in and repairs all the damage that was done. So all the stuff that you broke down during the day, your skin getting thinner and your joints getting thinner and wearing out and your muscles and all that, it all repairs better than it was the day before. So that every day, you know, every day during the day, yeah, you're breaking down from cortisol, but every night you're building up from human growth hormone. And then during the day, you break it down. And then the night, you build it up. Then you break it down, build it up, so that your functionality stays the same. You don't have to be aging and getting old and like, oh, I'm just old, I can't function anymore. That's not real. That's something that's just a fake of modern society, that we're going to get old and not functional.
Yes. Amen. Good stuff. All right. That's why we're getting healthy, because we're not going to live like that. Okay. This is interesting. Can you have too much B12?
Wow. That's a great question. I'm actually writing an article right now on B vitamins for home cures that work. And I looked up B12. So with almost all the vitamins, almost every nutrient and everything in your body, there's an optimum range. And if you get lower than that range, then your death rate goes up. And if you get higher than that range, your death rate goes up. And then there's this optimum range of the longest lived, or the longevity, or the best functionality happens in this range. Vitamin B12 doesn't have that. It's really weird. So as you get lower, the death rate goes up, and then it comes down rapidly, and then it just levels off and it never goes up again, even when you get super high levels of vitamin B12. So I don't think you can get too much, but it's not necessarily useful to have that much more because it's water soluble. You're going to pee it out anyway. And so when it comes down and reaches that bottom part, that's kind of the, well, maybe the optimum range, but as much as you need. And then more than that is just superfluous.
I mean, if you want to spend more money, you can, but it might not be beneficial, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, doctors have said that for years, that if you're popping vitamin pills, you're just making expensive urine. And that's not really true, but for the B12, it might be.
All right. Ashley said she was told she had low iron saturation. What does that mean? And first of all, can I just say, why would someone tell her that she had low iron saturation and then not explain it to her? That makes me sad.
Okay, iron saturation. So iron is bad for your body. It is really toxic. It causes oxygen-free radicals. It does damage to everything it touches. Iron is not a good thing. So what your body does, because you need iron to function, all that oxidation, that's really important. And that's how the hemoglobin molecule carries oxygen, right? Is iron. So in order to have that functionality without doing damage to your body, you make a protein essentially that holds on to iron. Ferritin is one of them, but there's transferrin molecules. And they grab onto iron wherever it is, so that there's no free iron that's available that can cause oxygen-free radicals and damage. So if you have a certain amount of that protein that carries iron that's saturated, and it should be 20% or more, 50%. It can be up a little higher, 60, 70% of saturation, that those iron-carrying molecules are holding on to iron. If you have more than that, if your saturation is higher, then you don't have enough iron-carrying molecules to take care of the free iron that's going to be released, like when your red blood cells are broken down or whatever. So there's going to be iron that's there, and you have to have enough of that protein to grab onto that iron and hold on to it. So if your iron saturation is low, it's usually below 20% or so. And what that means is you have a whole bunch of this protein around with very little iron being held onto it. And that usually means that you're deficient in iron. Not always, sometimes, because you make more of those proteins, and if there's like injury or a lot of stress or something, so you could have a high iron binding capacity, a high protein level, and have a low saturation and still have normal amount of iron. So you have to look at the big picture to see what it means.
Okay, Don is asking if diabetes can cause spinal stenosis.
Okay, the simple answer is not specifically no. So the answer is no. Spinal stenosis is caused by something else. So the question, can diabetes contribute to that? Not really. Spinal stenosis is a physical problem of narrowing of the spinal cord, around the spinal cord. There's some space around there and some fluid. And if there's a disc that ruptures, or if there's an area, and sometimes it's bony, there's an area that it's narrowed, and the spinal cord goes through there, but it's kind of getting pinched. It's called spinal stenosis. And so, of course, that physical pinching can affect everything below that area. So all the nerves below where that pinch is can be affected for whatever reason. And yes, neuropathy, you already have stenosis, and then you add the neuropathy on top of it. Okay, that could be a problem for diabetics. But that spinal stenosis isn't caused by the diabetes specifically.
Okay. Let's go back to neuropathy here. If you were to go to a traditional doctor and you find out you have neuropathy, what is the traditional treatment for that?
it's okay. So that's a good question. Okay, so first of all, they'll tell you to get your blood sugar under control. But part of the problem with that is they'll generally do it with insulin. And the problem of insulin resistance then increases. And so the neuropathy generally doesn't go away. So the neurologists who tell people that they have, oh, you have diabetic neuropathy, well, that's just going to progressively get worse and never gets better. And the reason is because they're treating with either drugs that increase insulin or insulin itself, which causes more insulin resistance, which causes more neuropathy. So it will generally get worse with those treatments. The other things that are done are really external things, because without dealing with the neuropathy, if your foot is numb, you have to be really careful to examine it all the time in case there's infections or something, because you won't know it because you won't feel it. And that's where people get amputations, is really not because of the neuropathy. It's secondary because they get infections and they get into the bone because they can't feel the infection and it doesn't hurt. So they keep walking on it and they don't fix it. They don't get antibiotics. They don't get treatment for it. So examining the foot frequently, you get special shoes that don't rub against your feet or anything, so that they don't get infections in them very easily. So they're all like, creams and secondary kinds of things to alleviate. Oh, and they also use, a lot of times they use a drug called gabapentin, which is something that slows down the conduction of the nerves, because people that have that tingling, and it's really annoying, so they take the gabapentin, so it slows down nerve conduction, which again compounds the problem and doesn't help it at all.
I mean, and I think they use that for what, like shingles or trigeminal neuralgia, those types of things. And do they work?
And seizure. And seizures too. Yeah, well, I've had people say it works for them. Most of the time it doesn't work. In the studies, pretty much a minority of patients are helped with gabapentin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, Dr. Saunders, thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow on the Healthy Heart webinar. Bye-bye. All right, guys, that is it for us today. Thank you for hopping on. If you didn't know, we have another webinar that we do. So we do 2 webinars each week. Today was our fixed blood sugar webinar. Tomorrow at 12 noon Central, we do our Healthy Heart webinar. So Dr. Saunders is going to come back. We usually have Cheryl with us, who works with our customer support team. She also helps with our Home Cures That Work publication, and she's an editor for that, and she's just awesome. And we do that again tomorrow, 12 noon Central Time. You can register for that at bartonwebinar.com. Same type of format, so you don't have to hop on and we won't see you, so you can come as you are, ask questions, take notes, but just 2 really good opportunities for you guys to get more information about how to maintain your health, right? And so we'd love to have you. We also record all of these. So at bartonwebinar.com, you'll find a link to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to that channel. You will be notified anytime that we upload one of these new webinars. And that is it for me, everyone. If you did go to our store today, I did post the link for that. What is it called? Barton store, Barton, I posted it. You can use code webinar25 and you'll save 25% on any of those supplements, or the diabetes solution kit, or the healthy heart solution kit, anything else that you may find. Code webinar25 will save you 25%. Okay, I know there were a lot of questions that we did not get to. We had so many today, but come back next week and we'll get to more of those. So thank you. You all have a wonderful week, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.